Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing the all-new digital controller from Junkfood Arcades, the Lunchbox, or LBX. Now before I begin, I'm going to give you a brief overview of this video. To begin, I'm going to talk about the Lunchbox from a qualitative angle. Build quality, software, using the controller, things of that nature. From there, I'll be talking about the Lunchbox's place in the current all-digital controller market from my perspective, including opinions. As a necessary disclaimer, I have not been financially compensated for creating this review, and I purchased this controller with my own money. I do have a financial interest in the success of all digital controllers of this style, as I run a business doing mods and upgrades for them. That business also primarily focuses on the Frame 1, a direct competitor of this controller. I will do my due diligence in ensuring these biases do not affect the review, but it's only right to inform you up front. Also, I'll be looking at this controller from the perspective of competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee, as that is where I primarily use these controllers, and it's what they are designed to work with out of the box. Let's begin with the technical overview of the Lunchbox. I purchased the Lunchbox in early February for $185 USD. It's one of the special edition Lunchbox pre-orders that came with a gray case and purple keycaps. I also elected not to purchase the Brickboard option, which would have been an additional $40, but will allow the controller a greater range of compatibility with modern game consoles. This can be added by the user in the future, but it will take some soldering. These pre-orders are all assembled by hand, and mine is number 33 out of 50 units made. Additionally, I purchased the carrying bag for $20. Shipping to my location in the continental United States was $14, so depending on your location, this may vary. The box came with the controller, a braided 6-foot USB Type-C to GameCube cable, a nylon mesh USB Type-C to Type-A cable, and the carrying bag, which as I stated earlier, cost me extra. If you purchase just the $185 Lunchbox, you will receive the controller and the 2 cables. Junkfood Arcades sells a number of accessories for the controller on their website. They have a variety of colored keycaps in the same concave style for $40 each, 2 different weights of bottom plates, and silencing pads for the keycaps, along with some apparel. Now, focusing on the controller. The Lunchbox is a 21-key all-digital controller designed primarily for Super Smash Bros. Melee. The controller's layout is similar to that of the original box, the original all-digital SSBM controller made by Hacks Money years ago. I will refrain from explaining every technical detail of the layout in this review, but if you are curious and want to learn more, I will link a video in the description in the cards about the methodology and design of it from Hacks Money. This layout is preferred by many Smashers to others, with the default and a few permutations of this layout remaining by far the most popular. Most notably, many players elect to switch the B button and the R button on the right index finger column. Moving on to the hardware of the controller. The controller weighs about 730 grams, or just over 1.5 pounds. It's small relative to other digital controllers as well, being 12.5 by 6 by a half inch. The case is made of 2 pieces, a hard plastic shell for the top, and a metal plate held in with screws at the bottom. The case feels sturdy and reliable, and I think the controller will last a long time as a result. The bottom case is a metal piece with a soft piece of foam to stop the controller from slipping on your lap. Mine has the special edition serial number and the logo, but I am unsure that this will be on the future production units. The bottom case is held into the top case by 6 number 1 Phillips screws, as you can see here. Disassembly of the controller is a mixed bag. Removing the bottom case is easy, as all you have to do is take the 6 screws to separate the 2 halves. You may also notice that I'm missing a screw, but I'll talk about that later. Just like that, the 2 halves separate and you can see inside the controller. Now, from here, it's a bit more challenging. The PCB is only held in by the switches, and these switches sit firmly in the top case in what many would call a case-mounted plate design. The given method to remove the switches is to push the posts of the switches through, and then the switch pops out. While this is reliable, it can be somewhat tedious and take some patience. Junkfood Arcades has a tutorial on switching out these switches and keycaps available on their YouTube channel, which I will link below and in the cards. The specific controller in the video is the Snackbox Micro, but the process is the same. Once the switches are removed, the PCB just comes right out. And then the process for replacing the keycaps is pretty simple. You can just separate the keycaps and the switches, just pull them apart, and they come apart pretty easily. The controller, similar to the box, is powered by a Arduino Leonardo on a custom PCB with a USB Type-C interface, very similar to the box. Out of the box, the controller has KL low-profile red switches pre-installed. These are a linear switch with 1.5mm of pre-travel, 3mm of total travel, and 50 grams of total operating force. This controller, like others from Junk Food Arcades, uses the KL Chalk ecosystem switches, and therefore, this controller will lock you into that Chalk ecosystem. The controller does support hot swapping these switches, as each switch has an associated KL hot swap socket on the PCB. The switches are also south-facing on the PCB. If I attach one here, just like that. Additionally, there are 5 hidden tactile switches for use with the Brookboard. As I did not elect for this option, the switches are not seen on the outside of the case. However, the switches are on the PCB, as you can see, and the case has clear places to drill out holes for these 5 switches if I ever want to add a Brookboard in the future. Another issue I've been having with the controller is the screws on the back. They like to loosen themselves up and fall out on their own. Many of you may have noticed that my lunchbox only has 5 screws left, as I've lost this one. It probably came loose sometime and I haven't been able to find it. Maybe it's just sitting at my local. I'm not sure. I notice every time I go to open the controller too, the screws are a bit loose, so hopefully this will be resolved in the production versions of the controller. Let's move on to the software. The controller has many different modes of operation for different uses. Junk Food Arcades created 4 different firmware options for the controller, each of them being individual .ino files that can be flashed to the Arduino. There is a Melee D input mode for use on PC, a Melee mode for use with the Type-C to GameCube controller cable on the GameCube and Wii, a Project M mode, and a Smash Ultimate mode. There's a firmware operation manual in a public Google Drive made by Junk Food Arcades, which includes a profile for use in Dolphin for Slippy NetPlay. This will be linked below. The document guides you through the hardware, firmware, and installing new firmware. As the controller is an Arduino, it is very simple to both flash and customize the firmware. The .ino files can be found from the GitHub repository for the controller, and with the Arduino IDE and some additional libraries, it's a simple one-click flash. As a side note, the controller has support for community-driven controller firmwares, primarily the popular CLFW developed by Crane. I will refrain from talking about these in the review, as the included firmware is the focus. In terms of legality, Junk Food Arcades claims compliance with the Smash World Tour rule set. This means the controller does include the quarter circle SDI and pivot nerfs, an explanation of which can be found in another video made by HacksMoney, linked below and in the cards. The angles and modifiers of the controller are also made to be like the box layout, and a full spreadsheet of the different achievable angles can be found in the Junk Food Arcades GitHub repository. The SOCD of the controller, or Selection of Cardinal Directions, is also compliant. This acronym describes the behavior of the controller when 2 opposite cardinal directions in the same cardinal are pressed simultaneously, as this is a behavior that is not possible on a regular analog stick. It uses the second input priority with no reactivation style of SOCD, where an opposing cardinal will be activated over a previously held direction. And to reactivate the previous direction, it must be deactivated first. This applies in both the X and Y cardinal directions. In order to remap the controller, the best option is to edit the open source .ino file provided for the controller, as a hardware solution would be intrusive on the PCB and no other software solution exists as of now. Finally, let's talk about using the controller. I took the LBX to 2 of my local tournaments over the past week, and it's been just fine. Aside from some minor hiccups, which I will address later on in the more opinionated portions of this review. I've been using this style of all-digital layout for about 15 months now, so I am more than fully accustomed to it. I've been competing at it with all tournaments in that same time period as well, but I've been playing on the Frame 1, not the LBX. The controller behaves exactly as I expect it would, and is responsive to my inputs. I understand how to use the layout for the game, so this is not a challenge for me. The layout works great, and I can use all of the options I desire in-game with no trouble. As for someone coming from a GameCube controller or any other standard controller with analog sticks, I personally don't believe switching was a major challenge. When I first switched, I fully dedicated myself to the controller, meaning I only played on my Frame 1 and did not use a GameCube controller ever again. It took me about a month to reach the point where I was previously on GCC, but I am now nowhere near the most avid player of the game. With a similar full Switch commitment, but a greater focus and dedication than I had, I believe it may take 3 weeks or less to switch from picking up the controller than to getting back to where you were on a traditional controller. This does take a serious time commitment. Like learning any other skill, you must put in the effort to learn everything about the task. It won't be trivial, and the time commitment is a requirement. If you're able to put the time in, you will be back to where you were in no time. This concludes the technical overview of the controller. From now on in the video, I will be talking about my personal thoughts and opinions on the controller, primarily as to where it stands in the current market of melee-oriented digital controllers. To begin, I will discuss some of the problems I have with the controller and the resolutions to said problems. The first local I took the controller to, I quickly noticed a problem with the SOCD. Switching between cardinals sometimes resulted in either a neutral or previous input, and this made things like aerial drifting onto ledge a problem. As the lunchbox is not technically fully released, I imagine this would be a software fix. I brought up this problem to Junk Food Arcades, and they fixed the issue in the next version of their software. At my subsequent local, all was well, and the SOCD behavior was fixed and worked as I expected. Other than this, I've had no software issues with the controller, and it's been good that this problem was quickly identified and solved. Hopefully the release version will iron out other small bugs that I may not have noticed. Now, here's the big one. Do I think this controller is better than other controllers in the market? Would I get it over some of its other competitors? So, as a reminder before going in, this is my opinion on the subject. Feel free to start discussions in the comments with what you think as well, but everything is my opinion in this video. The king to beat in the market is without a doubt the Frame 1. The Frame 1 Lite specifically, for $150, is just a ridiculous value. The controller is larger, it has better MX switches with a greater amount of customization over the KO Chocks, a durable plastic case, requires no soldering for Brookboard support, it even comes with a nice hard shell carrying case for that original $150 price. Additionally, the keycap options are higher quality, they're cheaper, they're more diverse. It's a hard controller to beat. I personally prefer the larger size as well, as it feels like I have to turn my wrists more to use the smaller lunchbox. Many of these same qualities applies to the $250 Heavy as well, but its greater expense gives you an awesome all-aluminum chassis and optical switches over regular MX. Personally, I don't think the upgrade to optical is all that to be excited about, but it is something to consider, as many prefer it to the regular mechanical switches in the lunchbox and the Lite. In my opinion, I believe that the Frame 1 Lite is easily superior to the lunchbox. I also prefer the Frame 1 Heavy, but with a higher price tag, there's absolutely a solid argument for the lunchbox, and it's only worth it if you can spare it. The Frame 1 Lite's unbeatable $150 price tag is the largest factor, as it's currently uncontested in both price and quality. Moving on to the two other largest competitors. The box, Hax's original rectangle controller, is $230 for a steel case with an acrylic top panel, along with Sanwa arcade buttons. The box is a reliable controller until the Sanwas that it relies on fail. I do not like the Sanwa arcade buttons very much, and I have a lot of personal experience with them being unreliable after a lot of in-game time. The MX upgrade for the box is an additional $70 as well. I do think that every box user should use this option. Unfortunately, the 20MX implementation is not the best in my opinion, but it does work and it is more reliable compared to the Sanwa buttons. With that in mind, I think that the box is actually useful and will last a long time if you buy that option. Unfortunately, that brings its total price closer to $300. This does not include a case or a bag either. I'd say that the lunchbox has this one beat as of now, as the box is very expensive compared to the lunchbox for similar functionality, and I do think that the switches in the default configuration are much better. Finally, let's talk about the Smashbox by Hitbox. The Smashbox isn't usable on PC without an adapter, costs more than all of the other options, and has the Sanwa buttons that I dislike. It does have 23 buttons though, which is the most out of any, but I don't really think this is necessary. I also dislike the hardware, as it's big and bulky, and I've only had Smashbox owners tell me about all the issues they have with it whenever I speak to them. I think it needs a bit of a rework to be worth $250. Plus, I also don't think it should even be legal in the current rule set, as its infinite customization allows the breaking of the Smash World Tour rules along with many other questionable things being possible. From easy ledge dashes on all characters, even Marth and Peach, to a lot of modifiers making it easy to have the best of both worlds. But hey, there's no macros, so it's legal, right? Now, there's one final thing that the Lunchbox is likely to do that, in my opinion, puts it above the rest. It's currently planned to be released in frequent batches like Junk Food Arcade's other controllers. Already, there are 2 shipment dates set on the website. The current digital controller space has a problem with pre-orders that sell out in minutes, long wait times for assembly, and difficulties in supplying an eager market. I hope that the Lunchbox, being one of the best digital controllers, will come in and upset the market with its comparatively high availability. If Junk Food Arcades can reach a point of having an in-stock item, it would be an even greater achievement, as this is one aspect of the Smashbox that I find respectable. It will often sell out, but Hitbox order enough units to keep it frequently in stock. As a plus, the controller having open source firmware is a huge win, as it only makes it easier to make the controller how you want. It gives the community at large a chance at making it the best possible. In conclusion, I'm very happy with the current offering by Junk Food Arcades. It remains a challenge to upset the Frame 1, but in my opinion, it's better that they are working to have these controllers out there quickly, as the long wait times for the best digital controller currently is an unfortunate reality of the world right now. And as a reminder, I was not compensated at all in the creation of this review, but I do think the Lunchbox is absolutely worth your consideration if you're looking for an all-digital controller, and it's easily one of the best. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to like and share this video with anyone who will be interested in this controller. The rest of this video will be sound tests of the controller, one with the stock switches and one with lube switches of the same type. Thank you very much.